Okay.
Are you in a closet, Jason?
We didn't hear that, Jay. Did you have a response to that?
I said, never mind, Bob. No, I said it's a little office. It's actually, Bob, it's I don't know, 12 by 8. I do hit my head once in a while though.
Hey, Jonathan, it's lovely to see you. Is it great to be back?
So great.
So great.
Yeah.
So
Just,
great.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I can tell with that enthusiasm. It's so great.
Yeah. Just a whole new person.
Were you
And
weren't
I have been for weeks too.
Is there an echo from everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Just not me.
I hear a little bit of an echo, don't you? A little bit of an echo? Jonathan, maybe. No? I don't know. Oh, there's Kirsten. Okay. Jason's leaving. He's leaving us.
Thanks, Chair Alcock. We are now live.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. So I would now like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the hearing. It is now 9:02 a.m. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001. I will now ask the recording secretary to conduct a roll call of members present.
Thank you. I will now call the roll of committee. Chair, Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock.
I am present.
Councillor Dan Armour.
Present.
Councillor Jason Fitzgerald.
Present?
Councillor Bob Stone.
Present?
Mayor Karen Terziano.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Weed.
Present.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that the Planning Committee agenda dated August 20th, 2020 be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. All right, my apologies. I have a new format in front of me, so here we go. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of the meeting to consider applications to amend zoning bylaw 2008 66P pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. The procedure of the public meeting will be as follows. A brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or their representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting these applications. Committee will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the planner, or anyone giving presentations. Once the public meeting is concluded, the input received and proposed amendments will be considered by committee and council. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address. Please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Please be informed that an appellant must provide an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission prior to the passage of the zoning bylaw. Otherwise, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss the appeal. If you wish to be notified of the passage of a zoning bylaw, you must file either with the recording secretary or with the clerk a written request for notification prior to the passage of the proposed zoning bylaw. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with that, We will now deal with application number Z32 2018 HTE 2609466 Ontario Inc. And I would ask Richard if you would like to speak to this application, please.
Sure, thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. The subject property is located at 18 Legacy Lane. The lot has an approximate area of 1.8 hectares and currently has no road frontage. Access to the property is via an easement, granting a right-of-way across a private road. The lot is designated residential and currently zoned residential 4 with exceptions 0249, 1455, and 1813. The applicant is proposing a 33-unit townhouse development with access off Haynes Road. The zoning bylaw amendment would change the zoning to permit this development by rezoning the lot to a residential 3 zone with an amended exception 0249 and a holding provision. The application was first submitted in May 2018 and has been before committee on several occasions. Public concerns were voiced relating to density, height of the development proposed at the time, traffic, and access on those occasions. In response to these concerns, the applicant has worked on a revised proposal which no longer proposes a multi-residential component and no longer proposes access off of Legacy Lane. The revised proposal is possible because the applicant recently acquired a property to the south of 18 Legacy Lane known as 46 Haynes Road. And this is illustrated. Oh, and also that they are proposing a land swap with the town, as is illustrated on the draft concept plan appended to the report in attachment number 6. This land swap involves the exchange of a strip of land on the west side of 46 Haynes Road, which was recently acquired and is shown in blue on the attached plan, for a town-owned strip of land between 18 Legacy Lane and 46 Haynes, which is shown as red on the attached plan. Site plan control will be used to ensure that design of the proposed 33-unit townhouse development will occur in an appropriate manner. It is understood that the development will ultimately form part of a larger condominium development involving 46 Haynes Road, forming the first phase of that development. Through the site plan application process, staff will ensure that site design for 18 Legacy Lane and all supporting technical studies and plans will appropriately consider this broader context. Comments on this proposal were received from the district and from neighboring landowners and condominium board representatives. The district's comments were appended to the staff report as attachment number 5. The neighboring comments were provided for committee to consider following agenda finalization. All comments appear to support the revised proposal, in principle, provided vehicular access to the property is off Haynes Road. Given that the proposed access arrangements and servicing details are not yet finalized, are subject to further review, and may be subject to change in consideration of the land exchange and overall proposed development plans involving adjacent lands, the applicant has agreed to a holding provision. The application appears to conform to the policies of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Therefore, staff are recommending approval of the rezoning with the holding provision. Thank you, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. At this point, I would call upon the applicant or their representative to provide additional comments.
I will now ask the applicant or the representative to use the raise hand button or press *9 if they are connected by phone to indicate that they would like to address committee. Chair Alcock, I see one hand raised and will now bring them into the meeting.
Okay.
During the transition, the video panel will be momentarily interrupted. Once you've been added to the meeting, your video will appear in the committee member panel. Please have your microphone turned on before you begin speaking and confirm your name and mailing address.
Hello, this is Wayne Simpson, Wayne Simpson and Associates.
Morning,
Please
Wayne.
find- Hi, Madam Chair. I'll start my video. I might as well. I had a shower this morning, so it's a good time. Okay. Appreciate the summary by Richard. This project has been delayed for quite a bit of time, but profitably delayed. We've been able to work with the abutting property owner, and Mr. Goodfellow was able to acquire 46 Haynes Road. So it'll allow for the future expansion of the development, and it'll alleviate the neighbors' concerns about additional traffic. Just to repeat what Richard said quickly, is that their property is currently zoned for 33 townhomes, and what's proposed is 33 townhomes. So in effect, there's no change in the density. The only fundamental change is that the access will now be out to Haynes Road, and that is conditional upon the municipality agreeing to a land exchange or permitting the developer to acquire at least the little piece of land that's going to be lying between the two developments that's required for road access. But we're in the process of finalizing the site plan application for 18 Haynes Road and 18 Legacy Lane. And we're in the process of doing some studies to support an application for a zoning amendment for 46 Haynes Road. And that would be expected to be submitted within the next month or two at the most. But I would appreciate if the committee would see fit to recommend approval of the zoning bylaw as recommended by staff together with the holding designation. And I'm available to answer any questions if there are any of the committee.
Thank you very much for that, Wayne. At this point, I would ask, actually, I apologize if I'm bouncing here a little bit, but it's a different procedure. So, Crystal, is it possible, can we keep Wayne in this format so that, and we will now proceed to ask any members of the public if they would like to ask a question or address this issue before committee, just rather than kicking him out and bringing him back. I think that would be my preference. Is that okay with you?
No problem.
Okay, perfect. So at this time, I would ask if there are any members of the public who would like to address the committee on this application.
So I will just note that members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 if they are connected by phone to indicate they would like to address committee. Chair Alcock, I am seeing no hands raised.
Okay, well, there we go. Thank you for that. So at this point, I do have a motion and I would like to read it before I open it up for questions from committee. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that Planning Committee recommend to Council that zoning bylaw amendment Z32 2018 HTE be approved, changing the zoning from a residential 4 with exceptions 0249, 1455, and 1813 to a residential 3 holding zone with amended exception 0249 to reflect the following: that a maximum of 33 townhouse units be permitted, that the building envelope and setback shall be as shown on Schedule X, C, and says see draft schedule contained in attachment 4 to report development 2018-126 amended 3. And further, that the holding provision may be removed and development may proceed upon the Director of Development Services being satisfied that the following has been completed. Arrangements to access the property off of Haynes Road are finalized or suitably advanced. Adequate provisions for infrastructure, including stormwater, roads, water, and sewer services, are secured to the satisfaction of the Town of Huntsville and the District Municipality of Muskoka, and the necessary agreements, including allocation, confirmation of capacity, and related easements as required, have been entered into. So with that, I would ask that, are there questions or comments from committee? Yes, Councillor Stone.
So is the plan to block access at Legacy Lane and only have access at Haynes, or is it going to be able to have through traffic?
With that, I guess I first I will ask Richard if you could respond to that, please.
Sure, thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. I understand the proposal would be to only have vehicular access across the currently owned town block and the newly acquired 46 Haynes Road through a street that will ultimately become part of a larger condominium development. And it would only be pedestrian foot traffic that would be using the Legacy Lane right-of-way. And that would be via a path built by the developer and subject to the necessary approvals through site plan. And I don't know if the applicant wanted to add anything to that.
No, that's correct. What Richard said, it'll just be pedestrian access out to Legacy. There is no physical roadway there now. It's a landscape strip with a hydro transformer in the way. So it'll just be left as it is with a pathway added to it. And there will have to be discussions then with Chartwell for the pathway connection out to where their property, where their pathway system ends.
Okay, that's good. Follow up, Councillor Stone?
Yeah, if I could. So I'm just thinking it through, and I'm just here, but we know Legacy Lane is difficult to come and go from on Center Street. I'm just wondering if actually maintaining traffic flow through Legacy Lane and coming out on Haynes might relieve some of the traffic issues on Center Street.
Mm.
And I don't need any response to that. I'm only musing about what I'm hearing.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe Councillor Wiebe had his hand up. Councillor Wiebe?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Alcock. I had a similar question about how the traffic was going to be managed and whether it would be actually stopped or not. There was something else that was that's been talked about in this application. That's the land swap with the town. Is it written or is it agreed upon that that swap is actually taking place, or is it still being contemplated as an option?
I would ask Richard if you could respond.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The land swap is not final. It's been proposed. What has been put forward is a concept plan for initial staff review, and there was some back and forward to determine what would be an appropriate in terms of the dimensions of the land swap, and the location of the lands to be swapped, what would be appropriate. And now we're moving forward with that concept plan, involving lawyers to draft up an MOU to ensure that can happen in an appropriate manner. But before we do that, we needed to get direction from committee and council to proceed with that. So that's where we're at on that front.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Councillor Wiebe?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Chair Alcock. So as these negotiations advance, would this have to come back to committee when a final kind of decision is made, or an agreement is made between the town and the developer for approval by us, or would it be, are we turning over the negotiations to staff at this point and letting that be?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, the recommendation before committee at this point is to direct staff to continue those negotiations. So yeah, it would be, this would be the opportunity to provide any guidance to staff on that front, and then we would proceed with those negotiations.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Terziano.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I'm looking at the diagram, I think through you to Richard, that shows the blue and red strips and the land swap. I'm just trying to make sure I understand exactly where this is. The development that is before us now is the piece down closest to the chart well. So on the diagram I'm looking at above the red line, the road, I take it the road going through, is it 46? What's the number on Haynes? 46? 246? So the road's going through that piece of property to access the one under development. Is that correct?
Is Richard?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is correct. So the attachment we're talking about, my screen is very small.
I wonder, is it possible to put that, would everybody like to see that on the screen? I think that would be helpful. I'm looking at it on my other computer, so is
So am I. And so my question is, if you can bring that up, is that I take it the piece of land that the road goes through is future development, which looks like it's got about another 40 to 50 townhouses or something similar on it.
I think
I'm going to just try and bring it up, and then we can maybe discuss that.
Good. I'm glad we're doing this because I had a little difficulty trying to figure it out too. Okay.
It's very hard for me to.
It's okay. We're doing.
I'm working on a little laptop too, so I apologize. I don't suppose you can see that?
Yeah, we can see it. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's okay. You're maybe a little too big. There we go. Okay,
so the original question is back. So the piece above the red line is the application we're talking about, and the piece below is a future application, probably. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and so the road is going through the piece of property that could be developed in the future.
That's correct.
To access this. Okay.
So that would be there.
I guess my second question is, and it's more of a follow-up to the other ones, is that if we approve this the way it is today and something happened that the land transfer couldn't happen, where do we stand? I'm not going to approve an application that the access is through Legacy Lane. So what I want is assurance that the access will be off Haynes Road and that this land transfer will take place, or that whatever we pass today isn't valid.
Right. So Richard, could you please?
Sure. Yes, thanks for that question. And through you, Madam Chair, the holding provision that's being proposed in relation to this application makes it mandatory that access arrangements are finalized through or are suitably advanced through the intervening town land and through 46 Haynes Road. So if those access arrangements are not finalized, then the holding provision could not be lifted and development could not proceed.
Okay, thanks very much.
If I may, just further to that question, if in the discussions around the access on Haynes Road, maybe this is a little bit of a further to Councillor Stone's comment about if there were further discussions about different traffic flow, that would likely fundamentally alter the decision we make today. And so presumably that would bring the application back if there was a change that was considered significant. Can I ask Richard or Kirsten to respond to that, if that made any sense? I don't know if that made sense. I'm just wondering if in the discussions with the direction from committee today, in those discussions, if it was felt that there was another factor that might be more suitable or something, then that would change the application and require it to come back to committee, would it not?
Yeah, and I'll take a stab at that. And then maybe it would be Wayne that would need to help. But my understanding would be that if they cannot, if access cannot be arranged across Haynes, the Haynes Road property, then the development could not proceed as planned, and the applicant would have to come back before this committee to seek alternate approvals in order to facilitate an alternate development application.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any other questions from committee? Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. Just about the land transfer, the red and the blue. Is there a purpose for us to get that piece of blue land, or can we just not sell the red land to them?
My understanding of the history is that the intervening town block was ultimately to be used for a trail, and the advantage to the town of the land swap is the trail alignment would be allowed to be a straight line from Kinton Avenue to the north all the way to Haynes, rather than jogging across or between the Legacy Lane property and the Haynes Road property. So we kind of saw it as a mutually convenient arrangement, and that's why we were willing to discuss this.
If I may, further to that, I assume that was the case, and I'm wondering what is the status then of the trail development once this, if this should be passed, then who's responsible for developing that trail?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. It would be the town's responsibility for developing the ultimate trail, and the schedule for that has not been determined. For now, what we would do is have those lands and ultimately would be able to plan for a trail in the future. And that would be, that would need to be confirmed with other departments who are responsible for parks and recreation, not in planning.
If I may just put a, okay, Wayne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add that 46 Haynes Road is not on a plan of subdivision, and there was never one before this date. So the municipality would be looking for 5% parkland dedication or cash in lieu. So with the development of Haynes Road, there would be maybe revenues available to the municipality that would help with the construction of the trail. I would also mention that beside the blue strip, the municipality does own a parcel of land. I think it's 33 feet wide. You can sort of see it on the line, just shown there. It was an old boundary between a couple townships, and both townships have a small section of roadway there. So the blue line is also adjacent to other lands the town owns. So it gives the municipality an opportunity to not necessarily build the trail in a straight line, but to be able to meander it a bit, to be able to have some street furniture, picnic table or bench and that sort of thing adjacent to it. So it provides the municipality with additional opportunities.
Thank you for that input. That's very helpful. I guess from my perspective, I just would love it if we would note the fact that it looks like if we have all of this development going in this area, that it would be, probably the timing would be right to start considering putting that path, trail, whatever meandering walkway in, because I think that, we've all said, our park development, our trail development is really critical to any new development. So I'm putting that out there just because. So are there any other questions from committee? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, I apologize. Right. We need to buy Wayne. We have to kick you out, Wayne. There we go. So I have to. I'm being reminded. Did you have this, Bob, when you were, oh, you probably have it all under control. All right, are we ready? Yep, okay, good. All right, seeing no more questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you all for that. Oh, there is a my apologies. There is a second motion. What's wrong with me? And the motion is moved by Councillor Armour and seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that Planning Committee recommend to Council that the lands as shown in attachment number 6 to report development 2018-126 amended 3 be declared surplus and transferred to the abutting owner at 46 Haynes Road in exchange for a strip of land abutting the unopened road allowance to the south. Conditional on 1, the applicant pay all survey, legal and associated expenses. 2, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the necessary documentation pertaining to the exchange. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So that's that one, right? Okay, so we're back to you, Richard, with application number Z60 2018 HT, Camp Minneoe, and that's that. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, the subject property is located at 1878 Muskoka Road 10 on the southern shore of Mary Lake. The lot containing the camp use is comprised of 3 camps: Edgewood Camp, Discovery Camp, and South Camp. That's moving from north to south, and has an approximate area of 70.8 hectares and 924 meters of frontage on Mary Lake. There's also a vacant back lot on the south side of Muskoka Road 10 that has an area of 2.6 hectares and 358 meters of frontage on Muskoka Road 10. The camp lot is designated waterfront and is zoned institutional camp with exception 0682, and the vacant back lot is designated rural and is zoned rural 2. The special exceptions applicable to the camp lot restricts the use of the property to camp establishments and limits overall camp accommodation units at 76 and places a maximum cap on the persons to be accommodated at 575. The applicant is proposing redevelopment of the camp, including construction of various new and or replacement buildings, additions to the existing buildings and structures, relocations of buildings and structures, and replacement of dock structures at each of the campsites. The zoning amendment is required to allow for the redevelopment to recognize the new uses, buildings, and structures, as the zoning only permits the camp's uses, buildings, and structures as they existed on the day the zoning bylaw was passed. And it's also proposed to remove the 76 camp accommodation unit cap. As noted in the report, this application was brought before committee in January 2019, and at the time concerns were raised regarding the nature of the development, particularly the position of certain accommodation units, and about the nature and extent of shoreline development from a visual and environmental impact perspective. To address these concerns, the camp consulted with neighbors and retained an environmental consultant to prepare an environmental impact study. Camp administrators also prepared a shoreline naturalization plan, which proposes enhancement opportunities within 15 meters of the shoreline to address town shoreline buffer policies and previous comments from the Mary Lake Association. On review of the proposed naturalization plan, the camp's environmental consultant noted it will improve the existing conditions contribute to the project to the protection and improvement of recreational water quality, and improve shoreline ecological functions. Mitigation measures proposed in that environmental impact study and the shoreline naturalization plan will be implemented through site plan control. Comments on this proposal were received from the district and from the Mary Lake Association. The district comments were appended to the report, and the Mary Lake Association's comments were provided to committee for consideration following agenda finalization. Both comments appear to support the proposal in principle, provided the naturalization plan and the environmental mitigation measures are implemented through site plan control. No other comments or objections were received. The application appears to conform to the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Therefore, staff are recommending approval of the rezoning. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have on that one.
Thank you, Richard. At this point, I would like to call upon the applicant or the applicant's representative if they'd like to speak to this.
I will now ask the applicant or their representative to use the raise hand button or press *9 if they are connected by phone to indicate they would like to address committee. Chair Elcock, I see one hand raised and will now bring them into the meeting. Please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and confirm your name and mailing address.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. My name is Michael Ankerman. My address is 19 Ferry Avenue, Huntsville, Ontario. I represent the applicant for this file, and I don't have anything to add to what Richard said. Would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. If you wouldn't mind staying there for the next bit, I at this point will ask if there are any members of the public who would like to comment or speak to this application.
So again, members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button or press *9 if they are connected by phone to indicate they would like to address committee. Chair Elcock, I am seeing one hand raised, and I will now bring them into the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Hello?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I had to push a couple buttons there before things would work. My name's Linda Kangas. I'm representing the Mary Lake Association. And what Richard's comments at the opening were completely accurate, that we in general support this application by the camp, and really commend them for doing the environmental study, especially focused on the water courses on the property. Now, this may seem a little bit nitpicky, but we would really like to see a little bit more naturalization along the lake shoreline. I think the target right now is 69% with the way the application describes it. We'd really like to see that get to something more like 75, which is consistent with the guidelines that the bylaws establish for shoreline residential properties. Again, it's a minor request, but you know, the shoreline buffer is so important to protecting the health of the lake, both from a point of view of erosion control and also absorbing, you know, contaminants from runoff and so on. So we just like to see as much naturalization as is possible when these developments are proposed.
Okay, Thank you very much for that. Is that, do you have any other comments, or is that's basically the
No,
message?
that's basically it. In general, we're very supportive, and you know, it must be a very well managed camp because they're, you know, expanding, and that's great. We love that it's remaining a camp.
Okay, much appreciated. And we will certainly address that comment.
Okay.
But probably at this point, we will send you back out. If that's
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
okay. Thanks. Okay, at this point, I do have a motion that is moved by Councillor Wiebe, seconded by Councillor Armour. It is recommended that Planning Committee recommend to Council that zoning bylaw amendment Z 60 2018 HT be approved, changing the zoning from an institutional camp zone with exception 0682 to an institutional camp zone with an amended exception 0682 to permit the redevelopment of the camp, including the addition, relocation, replacement, and removal of various buildings and structures as illustrated on Schedule 9. So with that, I would ask, are there questions or comments from committee regarding this application? Councillor Stone.
Through you, if we could ask Mr. Ankerman if he would comment about expanding the amount of shoreline remediation.
I will direct that to Mr. Ankerman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask Richard if he could confirm this for me. My understanding for institutional zoning such as ours, the legislated requirement is for 67%. And so in fact, we've gone beyond what is required. The other thing I would note is we have been very conservative from an environmental perspective in designating what parts of the 15-meter shoreline buffer are in fact naturalized and undeveloped. There are pathways and other things that I understand we could have considered, but we've actually looked very specifically at things that are completely undeveloped. So potentially the number is a little higher than we have shown. The third point I would note is that it is part of the Mary Lake Plan and the town plan to encourage and preserve the existing camp uses on the lake. And for us to reduce our development areas further would cause difficulty for us to continue the camp uses that we have had. So those are things we've been considering and balancing as we came up with the naturalization plan that we did propose.
Thank you for that. I will ask Richard if you have anything further to add with respect to that. That would be good.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The provision that Michael's referring to is under our shoreline structures and shoreline buffers provisions of our zoning bylaw. And there are provisions that for residential development would target a 75% of the shoreline buffer to be in a natural state. There is a more relaxed target for shoreline commercial zones. However, that target is, as Michael suggested, is 67%. However, that target, my reading of the provision, and it's 3.1.18.5, is that only applies to shoreline commercial 1 and 2 zones. And because the institutional camp is a shoreline commercial 3 zone, I think the target is best efforts. So I would, I guess, tend to agree with what the applicant is saying, that they have made best efforts to look at their particular shoreline, the nature of their use, and see what kind of balancing they could do. I was actually pleased with what I saw, but if they are able to augment it in any way, that would be obviously of interest, and we'd like to see it. However, I think we could work with them on that item through site plan control.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes, Councillor Weeb.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. So on the drawing that shows, it's a pretty high level sketch, which basically shows numerous buildings that are proposed to be removed and others to be added. Can we get a sense for square footage? You know, is the square footage of built form going to say double, or is it going to be a 10% increase? What's the, when it's all said and done, what are we looking at in terms of an increase in buildings?
I will turn that over to Richard at first, please.
Yeah. What I was looking at mostly was the number of buildings overall, and buildings and structures overall, and the number of what I would call camp accommodations. The camp does have the numbers. I believe they have the numbers that Councillor Weeb is asking for. So maybe I would turn that over to the applicant if they'd like to field that one.
Thank you, Richard. Chairman Alcock, I don't have the details right in front of me, computer screens and things. I can get that information. We'll be happy to provide the information.
Thank you for that. Is there any, just off the top of your head, is there even, do you have a sense of whether this would be doubling the footprint or just generally?
Yeah, actually, Michael, I did find the spreadsheet that you sent me, and I do believe it talks about overall area. So the current area in meters squared, I believe, is over all 3 campsites is 7,473.4, and it's increased through this application, the various new buildings, the relocations, the additions to 13,205.8.
Thank you, Rick. Oh, if I may, Madam Chair, thank you, Richard. I didn't have in front of me those details. I can speak to, you know, what is the thrust and intent of those things. There is one section of very small cabins that we're looking to upgrade, and so camper cabins, camper accommodation, which we're looking to upgrade and provide more space, more in keeping with current guidelines and requirements. That accounts for some of the space, but most of the increase there is for things like increased shop accommodation or shop space, maintenance shop space, and recreational spaces. So looking for a gym type facility, and then like picnic shelter sort of facilities. So there's rainy day accommodation and that sort of thing. There is some additional space provided for a year-round office, where we currently have a seasonal office, and it kind of goes back and forth in the winter between other facilities. So those sort of things are the major spaces there. We've also, the nature of camping and this sort of thing, we've tried to anticipate kind of everything that might happen over the next 5 or 10 years. We certainly don't have the wherewithal to be building all of this at this time. We're trying to anticipate which directions development may make sense to go in. And so this, you know, we don't necessarily see all of this going forward, but we're trying to prepare for different opportunities.
Thank you for that response. That's very, very helpful, informative. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Weeb, or is that, are you good?
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I guess my feeling is that we're approaching this much differently than we would, say, a residential or another commercial enterprise. I feel a little bit like, you know, well, we're doubling our footprint. We're not sure which buildings will get built, but we'll change the zoning. So go ahead and sort of do what you like within these restraints. I'm just not fully comfortable with it. It seems like you know, for years we've been very done our best to control the minor variances and the minor changes on our waterfronts with private owners, and to reflect that with a file that is a monster. I mean, it's a huge property. I understand that. It's potentially a huge development. I mean, that 7,000, an addition of 6,000 square meters of building, you know, that it's about a 40, or it's about a close to 85% increase. So I guess it's easy for us to look at the whole picture and say, well, it's a massive parcel and it's a big camp, is a big institution. But when I think about the numbers and the percentages and how I approach as a counselor every waterfront decision that's ever crossed my desk, this is not consistent with how I approach these types of things. So I feel there's something there's something in it that makes me personally feel uncomfortable with it, and I don't know if committee shares that or not. But I feel like I don't have enough information, and I'm not sure about it. I'd like to hear more from the rest of the committee.
Okay, I do have a comment on that, but I see Councillor Wiebe, you had your hand up, so I'll hold my comment. Councillor Wiebe, or Councillor Fitzgerald, sorry. It's been a while. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair Alcock, and thank you, Councillor Wiebe, for your comments. I understand what your comments are based on, Councillor Wiebe, and good for you. You always act in a responsible manner when it comes to these planning matters. So I guess the square footage thing, when I look at it, I think that quite often, if we compare residence to commercial or a camp, that we do tear down 1,100 square foot cottages and build 5,000 square foot cottages, and are very careful to mitigate through site plan and site plan control the effects on the waterfront. So when someone like the Mirror Lake Cottage Association is in support of this, and that camps are becoming a thing that is perilous due to land values and everything, I personally am out on the water all the time there, and the impacts of the current structures, everyone knows it's a camp and there needs to be camps for our kids. So I'm fully in support of this, and it seems that they're going ahead in a responsible manner, and we do have the opportunity for site plan controls, and they're moving stuff back further from current locations. So for me, I think this is a win for the camp, a win for the community, and a win for the kids who are going to go there. And how it gets implemented, I guess, is a financial thing. And I wonder if under the current circumstances, if things will happen in a very quick manner. I think maybe not, but if the association supports it and I support it, and we allow residences to quadruple and 5 times the size of current structures on the building, and we have all the precautions in place and the site plan controls in place, then I think we should support it. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fitzgerald. My quick follow-up to it was, I appreciate actually Michael's comments about this may not happen, tomorrow, but we're preparing for it. And I'm assuming that our planners, so I'm going to throw this over to Richard, that yes, it is almost doubling, but that's what we're looking at in this application. We're looking at it through that lens. So it's not as if we're sort of looking at it with what might be built next year or whatever. We're looking at it through the lens of what the ultimate build will be. And so the discussion around renaturalization assumes that we're looking at the ultimate build out. And so that's when I'll throw it to Richard, and maybe you could comment on that particular aspect.
Yeah, I'll through you, Madam Chair, I'll take a stab at it, and then maybe I would ask if our Director Maxwell would like to provide maybe some of the historical context on how we handle camp applications. But my view of it is it's almost like the camp is having to think into the future and almost do master planning. So they're almost having to, a lot like a park, like a national park or a provincial park does. They are basically trying to forecast into the future and see what they have now and where they'd like to go and how best to get there. And through the wonderful world of zoning, they have to submit a site plan that details it all. So I do appreciate the comment that it looks like a very large increase in area. I do have some numbers on what it means from a buildings and structures perspective, if that helps. But I do think it's more of a long-term visioning exercise. And what the rezoning is for is to basically take the existing site plan that they're required to implement and swap it out with a more with an updated vision of where they want to go with it. So I see it as more of a master planning that you wouldn't really get on like a residential property. It's just because of the nature of the development and that we require them to think comprehensively that you're seeing such a what looks like a big change. I don't know if that helps or if Director Maxwell would like to add anything, but that's my attempt to explain it.
Thank you. And Director Maxwell, would you like to add anything to that?
I think Richard explained it very well. I would note that we have had probably at least 1 or 2 applications a year for the last 10 or 12 years for different children's camps and applications to change the location of a building perhaps, or to put in a new building. And we do it in more of a piecemeal fashion. So when we've been seeing camps requesting changes, we've been trying to encourage them to look comprehensively at everything and not just, I'd like to put a building in this corner for now to accommodate 10 more campers. We would like to see the overall picture. And in this instance, I know that some of the numbers seem a bit dramatic from that perspective, but it is a large property. We will have the opportunity to revegetate more of the shoreline than perhaps we would otherwise. And the density of the number of people using the property isn't going to be changing from a dramatic perspective. So that's part of why we felt that this application was good because it is comprehensive and it's showing the whole picture. And it does give some flexibility to the camp moving forward, that they don't come back and have to see us every 6 months because that building's not going there anymore, we're moving it here, or we want to just do this one now and we won't do that one till later. We just thought it was a better compromise.
Thank you for that. That actually is very helpful. That in many respects, this is what we are looking for from applicants with respect to being comprehensive in their future planning. So that, for me, that's very helpful. Yes, Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you. If I just may, I just want to thank both our staff for those responses. It actually sheds a lot of light on the bigger picture and the vision. So thanks for that, and well done.
All right. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? What?
Bye-bye.
Oh, I have to ask again. My apologies. Michael, you have to leave.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. I maybe we'll get the hang of this at some point. By the time COVID's over, if it ever is. Maybe I will get the hang of it. All right. I think Michael has left the building. So I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you all for that. That was a good report and good questions, comments, all of that. So at this point, I am saying goodbye to Richard and welcoming Curtis for application Z18 2020 HDE 837899 Ontario Limited. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee, and those members of the public here with us today. The subject property is located at 417 Grassmere Resort Road. An overview of the property can be viewed on attachment 1 and 2 in the staff report. The lot is designated waterfront and zoned shoreline residential 2 with a holding provision and with exception 0352. The zoning amendment would change the zoning from a shoreline residential zone with a holding provision and with exception 0352 to a shoreline residential 2 holding with a holding with an amended exception to permit a short-term rental accommodation use within the existing dwelling unit located within a 2-story boathouse. To permit 1 short-term rental unit on the property and to reduce the interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 4 meters to recognize the location of an existing detached garage. This application also involves the passing of a bylaw to delegate the lifting of holding to the Director of Development Services once all structures associated with Powwow Lodge are either removed or brought into compliance with the Shoreline Residential 2 zone. In regards to the proposal, just a brief history. In 2019 and 2020, Council passed bylaws to permit and regulate short-term rental accommodations, providing they are licensed in accordance with the short-term rental accommodation bylaw. These bylaws only permit short-term rental accommodation uses within single detached dwellings and further limits the use to an entire dwelling or up to 2 bedrooms within an owner-occupied home. In this case, the applicant is proposing to rent out the existing habitable space within the 2-story boathouse, which was constructed in the 1940s and was a rental accommodation in association with Powwow Lodge. Given that this use has operated on the lot for a substantial period of time, staff do not anticipate a change to the existing character of the lot or neighborhood. Regarding the location of the existing detached garage, it abuts a driveway at the rear of the property. Again, this can be seen on attachment 2. Driveway, and it's near the rear of the lot and away from all structures and activity areas on the neighboring property. Its location, together with the existing vegetation buffer abutting the common lot line, would sufficiently screen the garage from the abutting lot in accordance with the official plan. The application has been circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The fire department noted that a fire inspection will be required prior to the use being permitted. To address this, staff will make the fire inspection requirement of the short-term rental accommodation licensing application. No objections have been received. The application appears to conform to the policies of the official plan and provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending approval.
Okay, thank you very much, Curtis. At this point, I would ask if the applicant or the applicant's representative is here or would like to speak to this application.
I will now ask the applicant or their representative to use the raise hand button or press *9 if they are connected by phone to indicate they would like to address committee. Chair Alcock, I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Then I would at this point ask if there is anybody, a member of the public, who would like to speak to this, ask a question.
Again, members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand function or press *9. Seeing no hands raised.
Okay, and I'm assuming, thank you for that, Crystal. I'm assuming that that also includes anyone who might be telephoning?
That's correct. We no longer have anyone connected by telephone.
Okay, all right, okay. I have to stay on top of it now. All right, I do. Then, seeing we don't have any members of the public, I do have a motion before me, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that Planning Committee approve zoning bylaw amendment Z18 2020 HT, changing the zoning from a shoreline residential 2 holding 0352 zone to a shoreline residential 2 H0352 zone with an amended exception to permit a short-term rental accommodation use within an existing dwelling unit within a 2-story boathouse, and to reduce the interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 4 meters to recognize the location of an existing detached garage. And further that only one short-term rental unit is permitted. So are there any questions or comments from committee? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Wave furiously if I've missed you, but I don't think I've missed anybody. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you for that, Curtis. So we are on to the next application, which is Z23 2020 HT Kennedy, and that's back to you, Curtis. Please. You're mute. Sorry, Curtis, your mute is on.
My apologies, Madam Chair.
No worries.
Through you, the subject property is located at 412 Burnell Road. The lot is designated waterfront and zoned shoreline residential 1. The purpose and effect of this application is to amend the zoning bylaw to exempt the development of the lot from the requirements of section 3.5.1 of the zoning bylaw, which establishes a 30-meter setback requirement for all development from type 1 fish habitat. And this is to facilitate the construction of a new dwelling, boathouse and dock. As the ministry, or as of the date of passing of the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw in 2008, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry had designated the river abutting this lot as type 1 fish habitat. The identified fish habitat was then incorporated within a schedule of the zoning bylaw. However, a recent provincial update of the thermal regime of the river has since refined the designation to identify the type of fish habitat as unknown. In accordance with the official plan, a technical study was completed by Riverstone Environmental, who classified this reach of shoreline as type 2 fish habitat. Based on the assessment of the existing nearshore riparian conditions, the study's author further concluded that any impacts of the proposed development could be appropriately minimized and will not result in significant change in the quality of fish habitat, including both physical structure or water quality, abutting the subject property. To mitigate any impacts on water quality and fish habitat, the author provided recommendations including limiting access to the shoreline to a 2-meter wide pathway, maintaining the shoreline buffer within a natural state, timing in-water works to respect sensitive timing windows, retaining in-water habitat features, and implementing sediment control measures. Site plan control will be utilized to maintain and enhance the natural vegetation abutting the shoreline, as well as to implement the recommendations of the fish habitat assessment in keeping with sections B238 of the official plan. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. One letter and a subsequent follow-up was received from an abutting owner raising concerns about the reclassification of the shoreline as type 2 fish habitat, the level of detail included in the zoning amendment sketch, drainage, proposed structure locations, tree clearing and buffering, and in the subsequent follow-up letter, raised concerns again with drainage and location of septic and the location of the boathouse in relation to 2 trees they deem significant in the shoreline. So the No other objections had been received. The application appears to conform to the policy of the official plan, and therefore staff are recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Curtis. At this point, I would ask if the applicant or their representative is here to speak to this application.
I will now ask the applicant or the representative to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. Chair Alcock, I see one hand raised and will now bring them into the meeting. Please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and confirm your name and mailing address.
Hi, John.
Good morning. Good to see all the council again. It's been a while. I'm here today on behalf of Dave
John,
Kennedy.
just for the record, I think you need to state your name and mailing.
Sure. John P. Gallagher, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H 1C9. I'm here today with Dave Kennedy watching online, and I have Al Shaw, who will also speak briefly after I finish my little spiel here.
Okay.
As you're aware, the property next to Dave is subject to this application. He has done the pre-consultation with Curtis, and we met with Curtis many months ago in looking at proceeding with this application. Curtis advised us that we would need the fisheries assessment. There had been a number of fisheries assessments in this stretch of the river that seemed to be having the same outcome of type 2 habitat. As such, we designed around that and came forward with a concept plan that basically meets all the requirements of the bylaw with respect to coverage, setbacks, etc. Another positive feature is that with the construction of the new dwelling, there'll be a new septic system, and that septic system will be placed 30 meters back from the shore, which the current one I do not believe is that far away from the water at this time. During the process, Dave wanted to get started on his dock, and as such, he applied for and received his site plan approval from the town of Huntsville and started to clear the land in accordance with his approved site plan. While we were in the midst of waiting for our meeting to occur, he had recently sold his house and is looking to move forward so that he can get started on his new home and in the area. The application and the property is somewhat narrow. However, we can fit the building in there, meeting the requirements, both for its setbacks and coverage. We've tried to keep the land to the north a fair distance away, so we've exceeded the side yard there. Dave's plan is to provide some buffering along that side on his property, as given the state of the property there. The boathouse, again, and the dock exceed the requirements for the setbacks, and it's almost twice the distance than the normal setback would be. We have seen Curtis's recommendation. We concur that this application meets the requirements of the official plan, the district official plan, and the provincial policy. Dave has been a good steward of the land, and I think his last project on Burnell Road, just as you come out of town at the bottom of the hill, shows what he can do with the property and turn it into something nice. The dwelling that's existing on the site will be removed upon the construction of the new one in accordance with the requirements of the town. And the buffering, again, as Curtis had stated, we have retained our 15-meter buffer. We will We have identified our shoreline activity area, and access to the boathouse will be in that location. I will turn it over just to Al Shaw. The majority of this issue revolves around the identification of the fish habitat. So I'll let Al speak to that at this time. If council has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Crystal, will you be bringing Al in?
Yes, I'll bring him in now.
Thank you. I can see Al. There we go.
Excellent.
Thank you. Al, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name for the record and all of.
Absolutely. Al Shaw, Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., 47 Quebec Street in Bracebridge, P1L2A5.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for that introduction, John and Curtis. Following John's description there of the planning process so far, we were retained by Kennedy Construction through John Gallagher to complete the fish habitat assessment that was required by through the pre-consultation with Curtis. As part of our process, we reviewed the property one side to the other for fish habitat characteristics, including the riparian area. The site was visited by myself early in the process, and then again by a second ecologist at our firm in the more formal part of the fish habitat assessment. Basically, we were looking for those characteristics of fish habitat that would be considered type 1. And just sort of probably as a refresher, the type 1 characteristics are those that are, they're rare on the landscape. They contribute significantly to the productivity of fish in the area, and are sensitive to development. And that's why they generally require a larger setback, why we don't put docks and boathouses in those areas. And really what that means are, in particular, are areas where fish are spawning, and more unique habitats, such as the examples that the MNR gives are spawning habitats, which in this case for the species that occur in the river, sort of the biggest one would be dense aquatic vegetation. So that's where you're going to see the largemouth bass, you're going to see the pike, you're going to see the yellow perch, and many other species actually use the vegetation for spawning. The vegetation is always also a great thing for oxygen. It oxygenates the water. It's a great spot for young fish to hide out and find food themselves, hide them from the bigger fish that won't eat them, but also find food from the bugs that grow on the vegetation. So those are key areas that we find. A second one for the river is also maybe smaller tributaries or areas where cold water is coming in, groundwater sources. So where another small creek would be entering the river, bringing groundwater, which is nice and cold, is great for brook trout. And brook trout do occur in sort of few locations along the river still. But those are the types of features that we were looking for, and really didn't find them along the frontage of the Kennedy property. We found sort of a narrow band of cobble and a bit of gravel there, some sand, and then it does actually get deeper, not far from shore. There were areas that had a few stems of vegetation, but in those cases, it's not dense enough to be suitable for fish to spawn on, or where there would be a vast production of insects for food. So our conclusion was that it was type 2 habitat, and that's the place where you want to direct development of shoreline structures to. As Curtis noted in his lead up to the project, historically the MNR had considered the whole river, front to back, side to side, as type 1 because it was they considered a cold water stream, meaning that it had a certain threshold temperature that was lower than to be considered a cold water stream. It had lots of brook trout in it. They have since reconsidered that, and really what they have done is brought it back to outside of areas that maybe have already been considered type 1 through studies like we did, where there are patches of aquatic vegetation or cold water creeks. Those maintain as type 1, but they really reverted back to unknown for the rest of the river, because the original designation of type 1 wasn't really based on physical structures, physical things that are out there. It was just this cold water designation. And they have since changed their mind on that and have said this is basically unknown territory now, and site-specific studies like the one we did here would be required to determine that habitat based on the policies of the official plan, where it asks for fish habitat assessments where the habitat is unknown. I think that's really all I need to say now. We consider the habitat type 2 and was suitable for the development of a dock shoreline structure in the locations put in our report and followed through with in the application. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much, Al. So I think that's it for applicant representation. Yeah, okay, thanks, John. I'm going to ask that you two stay in this picture while I go to the public and ask if there is anyone present who would like to speak to this application.
Members of the public, members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address. Chair Alcock, I'm seeing no hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I do have a motion, and it is moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. It is recommended that Planning Committee approve zoning bylaw amendment Z23-2020 HT, changing the zoning from a shoreline residential 1 zone to a shoreline residential 1 zone with an exception to exempt development on the lot from the requirements of section 3.5.1 of the zoning bylaw. So with that, I would ask, are there questions from committee? Yes, I think both of you are at the same time, so I'll go with Councillor Armour first.
Thank you, Chair Alcock, appreciate it. Just a couple questions for John, if I could. You mentioned a buffer between the two properties. I'm just curious what type of buffer that could be. Is it going to be a fence or a tree line? And the second question I have for you, along the shoreline where the boathouse and dock's going to be, the 6 meter wide path, how much vegetation is actually going to be removed across there?
Thank you for that. So John?
Thank you. With respect to the buffering on the north side of the property there, I believe Dave is putting up a small retaining wall with a fence as well as trees along that side to sort of break up the fence line. With respect to the buffer, again, I think if the intent is to maintain it in accordance with the town site plan development guidelines, which is 25% is allowed to be cleared back 15 meters from the shore. And I think it was about approximately 50 feet thereabouts is what the width was. And that ties in with the boathouse and docking location so as not to go any further. There was some areas there where the old shed was, and they've cleaned up the site there. And again, anywhere where there needs to be implementation of additional planting to fulfill the town's requirement, Dave will be putting that in the site plan agreement that just needs to be amended now. Thank you.
Okay. Are you satisfied, Councillor Armour, or do you have a follow-up? Is that good? All right. Councillor Wiebe?
Thank you, Chair Alcock. It was kind of, my question was similar on the similar lines. I guess I'm going to direct it to staff, though. I'm going to rephrase it slightly. Curtis, can you confirm, because I've received some commentary from members of the public that perhaps the tree and brush removal had gone too far or gone too close to the water's edge as it stands. Can we confirm that nothing has been done on that property that would exceed what would be permitted at this point?
Curtis.
Well, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Early on in the process, when the applicant, they had initially applied for a site plan to permit the construction of a dock, and we had previous discussions about this application. And we made it very clear that prior to hearing this application that we didn't want any vegetation removed, even within 20 meters of the water, keeping them well away from the shoreline buffer requirements of 15 meters. And by and large, that's exactly what's been done. They did obviously remove some debris, which can be seen in the pictures in the staff report. So fallen down shed, various other things like metal drums, and to, they did have to get some equipment in there to remove that, but by and large, they have followed all the bylaw requirements and have not exceeded clearing what would be permitted in the zoning.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from committee? Yes, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. Again, through you to John. I'm curious, when I'm looking at the picture, you mentioned that the new septic system was going to be more than 30 meters back. I just wonder on the map if you could show me the location it's going to be, because on the north corner there, it shows like there's a bit of a wetland there.
Do you need to put this up on the screen? Would that be helpful? Or I think if we're discussing it, it would be good. Curtis? Great.
I can absolutely do that, Madam Chair. My apologies.
No, that's fine. That's good. Thank you. All right. Is that the right? Oh, John did. Oh, okay. John put that up. Okay. So the question was directed to John.
Sorry, I had it on mute still. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the septic location you can see here is the 30-meter setback from the water. So we're looking at this location here. It's going to be a raised bed. If right now there is a bit of a low area in his driveway next door, but we'll be having to swale along the property line in that location there. I understood the man had some concerns with any runoff coming towards his property, and under the rules of law, you can't introduce any more drainage onto an adjacent property. So that's the plan for that, and the retaining wall will sort of help with that as well.
Councillor Armour, are you satisfied? Do you have a follow-up or?
If I may, this might be through Curtis, but that area right now seems to be a bit of a wetland, a small section of, lily pad or growth up in there. I'm just curious, how much is that not affecting the water course, that natural water course from the hill that runs down through there to the lake or the river?
Curtis.
Through you, Madam Chair. The area is actually presently not designated as a wetland or not identified as a wetland. And really the low portions seem to be associated with ditching that the municipality had done at some point in the past. So I suspect that perhaps maybe what would be best is if we asked Mr. Shaw, since he had visited the property, if he took a look at that specific area and if he has any input for us.
Great. Okay. I will ask Mr. Shaw if he could speak to that, please.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Yes, I agree 100% with what Curtis has said. There are a few cattails in that location. There's not a water course that goes through there that takes water to the lake. It's entirely associated with the ditching along the road and a small low area that was there before that now accumulates a little bit more water than it did before due to the ditching.
Thank you for that. Councillor Armour, your thumbs up? Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from committee? I can't see. Mayor Terziano.
Thank you, Chair Alcott. Just a question. I'm looking at the colored pictures of the waterfront that are in the package, Curtis, and or John, maybe. I'm looking at picture number 2 in particular, and I can see there was a lot of, I guess I'd probably be even polite in calling it garbage down there that I'm assuming has been cleaned up. But it's the tree growth along the water's edge. What is the plan for that going forward?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Should this application be approved, the applicant would be obligated to enter into an amending site plan agreement through which they would provide details on how they intend to implement the recommendation of this fish habitat assessment. In accordance with the recommendations, we'll be seeking to limit access to a 2-meter wide pathway down to the boathouse and dock, and maintaining basically as much of that vegetation as we can.
Thank you. Would either John or Al like to comment on that, or did Curtis cover it?
I think, the intent is to try and keep as most of the trees as possible. I mean, it works to Dave's advantage as well in providing buffers from people driving along the river in that section. And there are some good mature trees there. What people haven't talked about is the 2 large white pines that are located up in the southwest corner, which he has no plans to remove those. They're quite significant in size, and actually they look great. So I think with the shoreline activity area, we are allowed the 25%, and I believe Al's report supports that. And in theory, he could have went in there last week and basically set up his pre-building as he already had his existing house there and was proposing a dock. When the neighbor complained, the town did send out bylaw enforcement to the site, and they advised Dave that he did not do anything wrong in meeting his site plan approval.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Terziano, do you have a follow-up, or is that, or?
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that there's probably going to be significant improvements there. It's just that we are absolutely under fire for tree removal in this town right now. So when I see them there, I hope at the completion of this project, I still see some of them there.
Good. Right, so true. All right, Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I'm wondering if any consideration was given to a tertiary septic system up at the top of the hill there, given the nature of the drainage and the slope, etc.
I think, one of the items that will have to be finalized is the design of the septic system. Typically, tertiary systems are required under your OP when they can't meet the setback. We're going to be replacing a septic system, which quite frankly isn't that old, with a brand new system. If we have to get into the tertiary treatment, then Dave will do that. I mean, that's a common practice that he uses on a lot of the cottages that he builds. Should be noted that this is the cottage for Dave and his wife to actually move into. It's not being built on spec or anything like that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wiebe, follow up? You good?
Yeah, thank you. If I may, I guess the where I was going is just the overall plan in terms of drainage. And there has, like we mentioned before, there was some concern about drainage, and it's tough to undo it once the lands have been sculpted and the systems have put in. But I just wanted that comment on record, so I'm glad to hear that response. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Curtis, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. And just to add to that, Early on, when we received the letter of objection raising concerns about the drainage, I had a chance to sit down with the chief building official, and he did indicate that through the building permit process, he is aware of the issue. He's noted it in the file, and he's reserved the right to request an engineered drainage plan or some advanced sort of planning to address drainage if he feels it's necessary through that process. So.
Thank you for that. All right. So are there any other comments or questions regarding this file? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? I think that all those opposed, I think that was unanimous. All right. Thank you for that. And
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to send you two out again. Do I have to do that again? Crystal, Jasmine, they're both shaking their head at me. I know Jasmine's shaking her head.
No, Chair Alcock, that's okay.
You two were not supposed to be there for that. Too late now. We called the question. It's done. All right. Thank you. We're sending you two away.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I believe that is the end of the public, right? So I'm getting the nod. It is. So now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. So before we go to the remaining part of our agenda, I would like a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everybody. So it is now, what time is it? It is 10:37. So 10:45, we'll meet back again. All right, thanks. think we're almost ready. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're waiting for Dan. Dan, are you there? Almost? Almost there. And we need Richard. So
I'm here.
okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, shall I proceed? Okay, we're good. Oh, there's Dan. Okay, perfect. So we will now move to the non-public portion of the meeting. If the applicant or their agent wishes to make comments regarding their application, please raise your hand after the staff presentation. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Richard for SPA, Site Plan Approval 11-2020 HT Huntsville Properties.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, the subject property is located at 167 Howland Drive, which was formerly known as 404 Center Street North. The lot has an approximate area of 0.62 hectares, with access to Center Street North via a private road, and that road is shared by the adjacent hotel and restaurant development. The lot is designated business employment and is zoned Muskoka Commerce Park with a special exception 0327. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3-story mixed-use building consisting of 5 ground floor commercial units, one of which is a drive-through restaurant, and a 15 loft-style tourist accommodation or hotel units occupying the 2nd and 3rd floor. In 2018, Planning Committee approved a consent and a zoning bylaw amendment application to create the current development lot and permit the development. The official plan contemplates the proposed use within the business employment designation, and development in this designation should follow specified design criteria as outlined in sections C396 to C3915 of the official plan, which include, among other things, encouraging commercial uses to be readily accessible to passing motorists and ensuring visually appealing buildings and streetscapes. In addition, the policies encourage incorporating substantial landscaping using native species to enhance the aesthetic appeal of the development by screening less attractive elements and providing a buffer to achieve compatibility with surrounding uses. To ensure that the roads providing access to this development had sufficient capacity to accommodate traffic from the development, a traffic impact study was requested and was subject to peer review. This study concluded that intersection improvements would be required. The proposed use conforms to the Muskoka Commerce Park zoning permissions, and the development appears to comply with all relevant provisions of the bylaw. It's understood that the hotel accommodation units, which again are loft-style units, are proposed to be leased to allow the sharing of services with the recently approved adjacent hotel. Some minor amendments to the site plans are needed to ensure consistency between the plans and to address any forthcoming revisions requested by the MTO, as the lands are within an MTO development control area associated with Highway 60, and the district, who are conducting a final review of the site servicing modeling and plans. As intersection improvements will be required to facilitate the proposed development, and those are signaling improvements and an additional lane on Howland Drive for westbound traffic movements. Agreements will be needed to authorize and fund those works, and that would be subject to further confirmation with the town's Operations and Protective Services Department. No other comments or objections have been received to date, and in view of the foregoing, staff are recommending approval subject to conditions. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Richard. I guess I'll find out if the applicant is here and raises their hand or not, but Crystal, is the applicant raising their hand, or should I even ask?
Yes, I see one hand raised.
Okay, so will you allow them in, please?
Hello, my name is Bernard. I'm with Staples Architects.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind repeating that, just because it was a bit fuzzy. Sorry.
Sorry, my name's Dave Bernard. I'm with Staples Architects, or API. You get on the project since the beginning.
Okay.
It was like the beginning of time, actually.
It's been a while, right?
This one's been on the books for me for 15 years with this client.
Okay.
He's owned the land for a very, very long time. And we've now finally been able to build out all phases of development. What else do you want me to go through the project a little bit?
Well, it's up to you. If you feel you want to say something specifically, or if you're just available, is that you just?
I'm available, but I can also let you know that the entire building is all leased out. So we are currently in their conditions periods. So the sooner we can start construction, the sooner the better. It's a mixed-use development. The hotel agreement is actually in its final stage of signing the lease agreement between the two landowners. They finally come to terms with the financing component of it. So that should be to Richard very shortly.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. David, may I just, quick question. There was reference to leasing the loft space or working out a lease with the other hotel. And I wondered if there's any contemplation with the hotel, if that space, and maybe this is prohibited, but if employees of the hotel were to need a space to live, is that within the possibility? Is that the thinking, or because
it's not really the thinking, but it is obviously a possibility. We're not seeking a residential use. I believe the uses of the land allow us to put sort of, we'll call it a bunkhouse on the property. Just from memory, that's what I remember, that we are allowed that use anyways, so that employees could stay on the property to service the use.
Okay, Richard, if I can ask you to speak, just to, I'm curious about it, that's all. So was that ever part of the discussion? Just because we know our resorts and hotels often look for places for staff to stay, so.
I think the zoning on this particular lot is going to be pretty restrictive to any long-term accommodation. It's really for tourist accommodation.
Okay.
As well, the official plan designation for the area really is encouraging business employment. So it wouldn't be appropriate for any residential use on this property.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, committee members, I jumped in there. So are there any questions regarding this application from committee? Okay. I don't think I read the motion. My apologies. So I do have a motion before me. Councillor Armour. Sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I thought you were going to call the question, so I was just going to.
Oh, okay. I don't think I read it, so I think I haven't read it. So that's good. I see Councillor Stone with a little bit of a grin. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Stone. It is recommended that the Director of Development Services approve site plan application SPA 11-2020 HTE, and that the agreement be prepared to the satisfaction of the town. And further, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign any necessary documentation, conditional on all final plans and drawings being to the satisfaction of the town and all other commenting agencies. Again, last call. Are there any questions regarding this application? And and now I have to ask David if you would please leave. We will be sending you away. I got the big high five from Councillor Stone. Yes. Well, actually, you think I remembered that on my own, but I didn't. Jasmine actually had to remind me. So, all right. I can now call the question. All those in favor? And okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, back to you, Richard, with SPA 51-2020 HT Northland Development.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, the subject property is located at 931 Old Muskoka Road. The lot has an approximate area of 4.9 hectares and an approximate frontage of 90 meters on Old Muskoka Road. The lot is designated rural and is zoned Rural 1 with special exception 0410. The applicant is proposing to construct a self-storage facility consisting of 15 self-storage buildings and outdoor storage areas. In 2018, Planning Committee approved zoning bylaw amendment applications to rezone the lands to the current Rural 1 with exception 0410, which had the effect of including self-storage facilities and outdoor storage as additional permitted uses. And it also had the effect of requiring establishment of a vegetative buffer adjacent to Highway 11. Approval of this application would allow that development proposal to proceed. In regards to maintaining rural character and ensuring compatibility between the proposed development and the abutting rural uses, which is required under applicable official plan policies, as is outlined in the report, mature vegetation retention is proposed around the majority of the site. Further, staff have requested that the applicant submit a landscape plan to augment this vegetation with suitable plantings in buffer areas between the development and Highway 11 and at the site's entrance. The proposed use conforms with the site-specific zoning permissions, and the development appears to comply with all relevant provisions of the bylaw. A number of minor changes will be needed to the plans prior to final approval, and these include further details relating to parking and lighting. Additionally, the landscape plan is still needed, as I noted earlier, and must show plantings in the locations I noted earlier. Comments have been received from building and fire department reviewers, and both request site plan revisions to include the location of water supply and firefighting needs and dry hydrant locations. A fire suppression plan will be submitted to the town to address these comments. No other comments or objections have been received to date. In view of the foregoing, staff are recommending approval subject to conditions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Richard. So with that, if the applicant or their agent wishes to make comments regarding this application, could you please raise your hand now?
The applicant has raised their hand and I will be bringing them in now.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Thomas Kirkby of Kirkby Land Use Planning Limited, 9 Maple Avenue, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1H2. I'm the applicant's agent for Northland Development Group in regards to the self-storage development area. Well, one or two things I'd like to mention is the vegetative buffer that was brought before that Council recommended in 2018 has and will be honored along Highway 11. Portions of Highway 11, there's a significant grade change on the northbound lanes with a rock hill Therefore, that acts as a buffer for a significant portion, almost a third of the site. Additionally, another portion of the site has existing coniferous vegetation, which makes an existing buffer possible. All of those trees are to remain, as well as enhancements in the areas where there is no tree bufferage to apply and adhere by the site plan guidelines in the site plan guideline handbook. Richard and I are in the process of ironing out how many trees, the location of the trees, and a significant enough buffer to mitigate those views from Highway 11 northbound and southbound. Furthermore, the fire suppression plan, Chris Nagy, Dan Duke, and myself met in January of 2020 to discuss the fire suppression plan to ensure that all three phases or all buildings of the development is to be included and will be covered by the dry hydrants as well as the fire suppression tanks. That plan has been created and is being stamped by the engineer as we speak and will be forwarded to Richard in the next few days. Additionally, I'd like to address some of the photographs as they show a site under construction. The overburden on the site needed to be removed in fall of 2019 to conduct a grading analysis as the site is so large. And I also wanted to add that the site in general, it seems like we removed quite a few trees. That is not the case whatsoever. The site was a large, open, vacant grass field. And any trees that you do see removed were in the northern outdoor storage area, which is significantly buffered to the residential, the highway, and the Old Muskoka Road frontage. Therefore, those are the only trees that have been removed, and it's been very minuscule at this point as most of the development fit within the grassed vacant area that was existing. And I'd be happy to answer any further questions that the committee might have.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. At this point, I would like to read the motion. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. It is recommended that the Director of Development Services approve site plan application SPA 51 2020 HTE, and that the agreement be prepared to the satisfaction of the town, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign any necessary documentation, conditional on all final plans and drawings being to the satisfaction of the town and all other commenting agencies. So with that, I would ask if there are any questions from committee. Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. So it says that it's 15 storage units being constructed, but judging by the sizes, are we talking 3 units per building, or how does the ultimate break?
Okay, subsequent.
Thank you. If I could just follow up and direct to our staff that knowing that, if I got the numbers right, there'd be 150 units. We assume that there's 150 tenants, and are we okay with the sort of traffic levels and all that comes with that?
Richard?
Yeah, one of the things we're still ironing out is just the parking. It's one of those things, I think it'll just be like, it's not going to be asphalt. It'll be stone, gravel, parking area. So we're just trying to make sure that the right spaces are shown on the plan to address zoning compliance. But there will be ample room for that, for parking. We just need to have it shown on plans.
Okay. Councillor Stone?
There's lots of talk about the buffer and all the things we're doing to keep it. Are we going to see this from the highway?
I will ask Richard, please, if you could respond.
Well, I would just note that through the zoning, there is a requirement for a 5-meter buffer between the development and the highway. I'd also note that, and Thomas can elaborate, but in discussions with the MTO, that ministry has identified the need for a setback. And that setback would be to potentially allow for, changes to the highway in the future. So we are dealing with a bit of a moving target. And I think with Thomas and his client's cooperation, what we've suggested is the 5-meter buffer needs to be kind of snug to the limit of the development and not right in that MTO buffer area, so that if there is future expansions, we're not going to be left with no screening. So that is something we're still working through with the applicant.
Thank you for that. Yes, follow up?
Might I ask the client's representative if we're going to be able to see this from the highway?
Madam Chair, the intent is that there will be no views from the highway. When the initial plantings are installed, it will be for future growth. So there may be some small views. And to further your comment, Councillor Stone, I have conducted a drive-by analysis of northbound and southbound lanes. That is where I am basing my landscape plans on, and that's what Richard and I are working towards, is mitigating any and all views from the highway. The only thing that we are hoping to be able to remain visible from the highway is some form of signage, which we're in the process of approval from the MTO as well as the town of Huntsville side of things for the signage, as well as the lighting, make sure that it's dark, everything will be dark sky compliant and so on and so forth. However, long term, we do not anticipate any views from the highway, or if so, very, very minuscule views in between the trees, buffering trees.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Councillor Armour got in there. Just
thank you, Chair. Just through you to Councillor Stone, actually. I drive the highway every day, and heading south, you can't see it at all. Coming north, there is a small view of where they've cleared, but it's fairly well hidden behind a hill up there.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. All right. I don't see any more questions, so I will call the question. All those in favor? What did I do? Oh, I did. Oh my God, I just realized. Oh no. Well, maybe I just need to change the rules. Thomas, we're laughing because I was supposed to have kicked you out.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Do I have to recall the question? I think it's already decided. No more laughing. All right, thank you. I believe that was unanimous. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to comment? Will this add to this?
I just want to say, in your defense, that the public meeting participation and during emergencies panelist instructions, the clerk will ask the person to leave. So you're off the hook, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Fitzgerald. You're so thoughtful, and I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We are on to our last file, and that is RC01 2020 HT Ellis. And thank you, Richard, for all your work, and we're over to you, Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This application is a fairly typical original shore road closure application. If committee's amenable, we could just proceed with passing of the motion. I'm definitely happy to provide committee an overview if you wish. All right.
Is committee amenable? I see that. So I will read the motion since it is the only one of the road closure. So I will read it. I do have a motion moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Wiebe. It is recommended that application RC01 2020 HT be approved in accordance with the original road and shore road allowance closure policy, conditional on 1, the applicant pay all survey, legal, and associated expenses. 2, the sale price for the land proposed to be closed be in accordance with the fees and charges bylaw as amended. 3, a survey and duplicate be provided showing the shore road allowance as a specific part of the plan. 4, a registered transfer deed of land for the shore road allowance be filed with the municipality within 1 year from the date of the motion approving the application, or the motion will be considered null and void and a new application will be required. 5, that any utility plant located on the property proposed to be closed be given an easement. 6, the shore road allowance is hereby declared a surplus to the town's needs. 7, the portion of the shore road allowance being closed merge on title with part lot 17, concession 1, geographic township of Stevenson, being lot 53, RCP 519. 8, that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the necessary documentation pertaining to the closure and sale of said shore road allowance. Are there any questions, comments about this? I don't think I see any hands, so I will call the question. All those in favor? I think that's everybody. All right, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee.
Thank you, Curtis, for everything today. So I believe that is it for our agenda. I don't have the full agenda in front of me, sorry. Does anybody have new business that they would like to raise? Councillor Fitzgerald, see, there is some new. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Don't be so surprised. I just want to say good job today through adversity and the changes. So thank you.
That's so kind. Thank you very much. And that balances out what Councillor Stone is thinking. But I do appreciate it. Thank you to committee for being so patient, and to everyone else for being so patient, and staff. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Stone and seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. It is recommended that we do hereby adjourn at 11:14 a.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, I bid you adieu.
See you Monday night.
All right, that's right, Monday.